We are now joined by Senator John Boozman from Washington, D.C. Senator, thank you so much for being with us. Let's begin with really something that has amped up a lot this last week. It's been going on for several months, but we've certainly seen some heightened tensions between North Korea and our allies in East Asia over there. Let's talk about their aggression. How far are you willing to go to address this North Korean aggression with these missile launches? Are we at a point now where military intervention is something that has to be on the table and start to be considered?
Well, it's such an unstable regime. I think you do have to consider everything, and certainly I think it's a great mistake whenever you start taking things off the table. But this is a group that's definitely testing the United States. They're testing their neighbors. They're so unstable. They're so poor. When you're flying to South Korea, it looks like an island because there's no electricity in the north, or it's very, very rationed. So as a result, the only thing that they've got is just being belligerent. And so they're belligerent, and then hopefully they hope that we will pay them off or back off a little bit, help their economy a little bit. The other thing that they've noticed is when you look at other countries, places like Libya where people have intervened, they haven't been nuclear powers. So they really do feel like it's important to have the nuclear weapon as a deterrent so that they can continue down the path that they are. It's a great test for the president. Certainly Congress, I know in a very bipartisan way, is going to be working on this and is working on this very, very hard. This is about all Americans. It's not about Democrats and Republicans, but I hope we can come together with the resolve that we need to do what we need to do. And I don't know that we really know that yet, but we've got good people in place. I think certainly our military commander, chief of the Defense Department, Secretary of the Defense Department, Chief of Staff of the branches, all of those people are coming together to try and give us a plan.
All right, so a plan will be forthcoming is what you're basically telling me this morning. So
yes, sir, it is, and again, I'm that's probably in the works now. I think also, I don't know that we're going to be telegraphing exactly, what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. Certainly, that makes no sense when you're facing a really significant adversary in the sense of North Korea.
All right, let's talk about the immigration executive order that the president has put forth. It is a revised executive order from the one that caused so much controversy several weeks ago. Do you want to see more than what is in that executive order, or is it sufficient in your eyes? If you want to see more, what would you be interested in seeing?
No, I think it's sufficient. What I want to do, I think in fact, I know what the president wants to do is make it such that we've got confidence in our visa system and, all of these things concerning that. So what he did was basically say for 90 days, 6 countries, they've put Iraq back in, taken them out of the fold in the sense that Iraq has agreed to cooperate and give us much more information with people coming over. That's a good thing. That's how we want to work with these countries. These 6 countries, 4 of them we don't even have embassies in. So I think it's okay. I think it's in our national interest. I think it's in all of our interest to make sure that the people that are coming over are well vetted. What they did was say people with visas, people with green cards, legal residents, this doesn't affect them a bit. I think that's fine. This is moving on. And I think it's an important thing that we do. The other thing that nobody's talking about is we've got 40 days to evaluate all of the countries in the world, making sure that all of them are giving us the information. Some of them probably will come up short in that regard. And then they've got, we got 20 days to do that. Those countries will have, I believe, 40 days to respond to that and start giving us the information that we need. But we need to put confidence back in the system, making sure that the public, making sure that Congress, feel like that we're taking the steps that we need as we let people into our country. And that's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. But we do make sure that ISIS and people like that are not infiltrating.
What do you think will happen with those countries that may not meet the threshold that you're talking about there if after this 20-day and this 40-day period? Would you see the president expanding this executive order? Would you see Congress taking action to put more restrictions on those countries?
I think it's a possibility. And again, travel's important. It's important for all kinds of reasons. Exposing people to our culture, it's great for our economy, but we do need to keep people safe. So if we find out that we're lax, I believe that what will happen is those countries will work with us to start coming up with the security measures that we need to make sure that that their folks, when they visit our country, again, we have the security to know that we know about them and the security measures are in place. So I don't, hopefully we won't be putting a bunch more countries on. Hopefully countries will be cooperating more. If there are countries, though, that simply are not doing a good job and refuse to do a good job, then, the president or somebody, Secretary of State probably will come forward, Director of Homeland Security, and say, these are countries we're concerned about and this is why.
Let's talk about health
care. The
care.
other thing, Robbie, I think this illustrates, the other thing that illustrates this is not a Muslim ban or things like that. This is about protecting America. And so we need to go forward. We need to look at all of these countries, and the chips are going to fall where they fall.
Let's turn our attention to health care reform. The House GOP leadership has rolled out a plan. There seems to be obviously an uprising from some more conservative members of the Republican caucus. Democrats clearly are not going to go along with this without some major changes. And even some U.S. senators have said that as the plan currently stands, it is DOA in the U.S. Senate. You've read and seen a lot of what's out there. There's been enough of that information floated around. From what you've read and seen, what do you think needs to change in terms of health care reform to move this thing forward where you would vote for it?
Well, I think the change that I would like to see is for us to slow down a little bit. This is 18% of the economy. This affects all of us. Friends, families, individuals. It's so very important that we get this right and make it such that that people are covered, that need to be covered, and yet we do it in such a way that we don't ruin everybody else's health insurance, trying to lower costs, trying to make things affordable. Now, right now, we're really working hard, trying to understand what's in the current bill. Today, it's in committee, and they literally will spend at least 12 hours today amending what's in there. So, again, I think it's important that we're very, very diligent in this, get feedback from the hospitals. We're working with the governor's office, getting his feedback, also from the providers, making sure that we don't have a bunch of unintended consequences as we did with the Affordable Care Act.
So with all of that input, I mean, today, how far would you say we are from seeing something that's going to be voted on by the House? Do you think this is going to be pushed forward quickly? There's been a lot of concerns. The Congressional Budget Office hasn't even scored this in terms of its fiscal impact. Right. I know you said you wanted to see things delayed and maybe take a little bit more time on this, but there is a rush to push this through from not only House leadership and some Senate leadership, but also the president. So how do you put the brakes on this?
Well, I think, people are putting the brakes in the sense that, there's a number of people that are unhappy with the current product. That's not really bad in the sense, that's how legislation is formed. You get a lot of input, you get a lot of concerns, and then you start modifying things. So I think that's really where we're at. We'll wait and see what the amendments, the modifications are today. The other thing, Robbie, that we're constrained by is this is not like a regular law. We're doing this through a thing called budget reconciliation. And it has to do with just budget. It has to just do with dollars and cents. And so as a result, you can't put policy into this particular, part of it. So it's very complicated. The Secretary of Health and Human Services will play a big part in this. They have a lot of ability to modify the current law. And so I think it's just everybody working together, trying to come up with a product that's going to be good for all Americans. Again, the thing that's so important is lowering the cost curve, making things affordable. So many people in Arkansas have had their premiums doubled. So many are in situations with $5,000, $10,000 deductibles. That's not insurance, that's catastrophic insurance, and is really not acceptable.
Yeah, and I don't know what the magic bullet is to get that cost down, so good luck to you guys in figuring out that policy. I'll look forward to the details as this weaves its way through. Let's talk about one of the most buzzworthy topics of this past week, and that is the president's accusation that former President Obama wiretapped him at Trump Tower. Do you think that Obama wiretapped President Trump? Where do you stand on this?
Well, my understanding is, the intelligence community, intelligence agency, they've come out and said, that's not correct. I think what the president is trying to say is that, perhaps they were bugged. Now, presidents don't formally ask for those things to be done. That goes through the Department of Justice and the FISA court and all of those kind of things. So we'll just have to wait and see where it leads. It's just another thing that the Senate and the House intelligence agencies will be looking at, and he's put that on the table. And so in putting it on the table, I think they're going to be doing their diligence and working hard in a very, hopefully bipartisan way to really come to some answers. It's interesting, we've had the WikiLeaks dumps, and we're trying to understand exactly what's going on with some of the agencies in that regard, how they do get information on us. But right now, I don't think there's any evidence that the President of the United States did that, although there's going to be a lot of investigation in that regard, if that makes sense.
Sure. Last question for you. Let's talk about...
Attorney General may have, which...
I'm sorry, say that again? Say that one more time?
No, again, the thing I was going to say was, certainly you've got the president and then you've got the administration. The Attorney General, the Department of Justice would be the one that would go forward on something like that. But my understanding is so far there's no evidence of that, and yet it could have gotten picked up in regard to wiretapping somebody else. And so it's complicated, but the good news is that the president's put it on the table, and there's going to be a lot of discussion about it, like we're doing today.
Sure. Last question for you here. The Clean Line Energy Project has made some headlines again this week. You and your fellow congressional colleagues are filing a piece of legislation. You've sent a letter to the new Energy Secretary, Rick Perry. Have you spoken with the Energy Secretary, Mr. Perry, yet about this? And if so, how would you kind of couch his position at this point in time? Any indicators of where he stands on this issue?
No, sir, I haven't talked to him directly. I talked to the former secretary at great length with this, as did the rest of the congressional delegation. And that's something that we will be scheduling very, very shortly to get his ear and explain to him our concern is the fact that when you go forward with this, and this is the first time that this law has ever been used, all of the other pipelines and electricity projects, you've gone through the states, the governors, the utility commissions, all of them have had input. Now we're in a situation where a private firm working with the Department of Energy is bypassing all of that, and we simply don't feel like that's a good situation. There's concern that TVA even needs the energy. So we'll be talking with Secretary Perry, making our case, trying, as you say, to try and figure out where he's at on these kind of things. But that's our concern, is we want it to be done like the Keystone Pipeline, all of these other projects where the states, the counties have a say in where the route is and saying whether or not they feel like it would be beneficial to the state and thus go forward.
All righty, Senator John Boozman with us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for your time, Senator. Good to be with you.
Thank you, Roby. Well, thank you so much for having me, as always. Appreciate you.